Hello and welcome to the 8th video tutorial for CSC251 Advanced Java Programming. This is the final video in the series, and we're going to end with a brief introduction to networking. The topics covered will include the TCP and UDP protocols, some networking libraries, socket basics, the idea of client and server, and the URL class. Transmission Control Protocol, or TCP, is probably the most well-known networking protocol in the world. When you connect to the internet with a browser, you're generally using TCP. It's connection-based, which means that there needs to be an active connection for it to work. It's slower than UDP since it reorders the packets it sends and does error checking. HTTP, HTTPS, and FTP are some examples of connections that use TCP protocol. User Datagram Protocol, or UDP, is very different from TCP. It's connectionless, meaning a program can send off packets to another and that be the end of the relationship. It doesn't care what happens to them. UDP is good when losing a packet or two, or packets not always arriving in the right order, won't cause much problem. As such, it's very common for gaming. Java comes with a built-in library for networking, java.net. But it's not the only one. Apache's Java networking package is very popular since it's extremely powerful and useful for professional level work. Jexis is a Google project that encapsulates the Java networking API. This makes it easier and far more convenient by cutting down on the low-level code. Now I'm going to give you a brief rundown of sockets. Sockets are an endpoint of communication between two programs. They don't have to be used for networking over the internet, though. Many programs use sockets to communicate with other programs on the same machine. A socket on a machine that's opening a connection is considered a client, while a remote socket listening for connections is considered a server. A server socket works by binding itself to a single port. Once it does that, no other program or socket can use that port until it's released. After binding, a socket starts listening for connections. This communication is all I/O and stream-based. The general idea is that a client opens a connection, makes a request, receives a response, and then closes a connection. Counter to that, a server listens, receives, sends, and then closes the connection. Obviously, this is a simplification and not always the case, but it's useful as a starting point for understanding. If you're going to be connecting to websites, you probably don't want to bother with all the low-level stuff involved, namely sockets. The amount of code required to create a socket, connect to a website, send data, receive data, and then parse it and respond again is staggering. That's the reason for things like Google's Jexis. However, instead of that, I'm going to quickly go over Java's URL class. A URL has two main parts, its protocol and resource name. The protocol, things like HTTP, determines how the communication and connection will be done, and the resource is everything else, the target. This code shows different ways of creating new URL objects. The first example is an absolute target. The second is a relative target for when you want something on a page you're already on. In the example, URL2 would become test.com/relative.html. If your URL has special characters, they need to be encoded correctly. You can use URI as shown to put in a URL that has special characters, and it will encode them as needed. From there, you can easily open connections and send and receive data by making URL connections. You use URL's open connection function and then either use getInputStream if you want to read data or getOutputStream if you want to send data. To review what I went over today, I discussed TCP and UDP, the Java Network Library, sockets, client and server, and the URL class. There are many good resources for learning more. I advise you to look at the Java docs, which include tutorials, and search Google for more. Thanks for watching.